All right, thank you very much. I really don't have a lot of slides on this. In fact, I was told that probably I would only need one slide for this talk. And that is to say that what's new in LI-RADS in 2019, and the answer is nothing. So, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and sit down now, and we can all grab drinks. Now, just kidding. There have been some changes, and I do want to bring you guys up to date on those. There have been no official changes. Okay, the algorithm has not changed since 2018, so that is great news for everybody here. And this is here because I don't want you to remember the website, but I want you to remember that you type into Google ACR LI-RADS, and you can find any of the information I'm about to talk about there, and much more. All right, so we have 4 individual imaging contexts within LI-RADS. And I want to start today by focusing on the diagnostic CT and MR, and I want to focus on what are the changes there and what's happened in the last couple of years, just to kind of bring everyone up to speed and make sure that we're all on the same page. In order to do that, I'm going to force you to listen to a very brief recap of how we apply LI-RADS, and it's going to be within less than 2 minutes. Okay? This is how easy LI-RADS is to apply in practice. Step 1, we just need to make sure that we're applying it to the right patients. So we want to make sure that we're applying it to patients who are truly at risk and have a very high pretest probability for HCC. To avoid this scenario, we don't want to falsely diagnose HCC in someone that doesn't have it. Step 2, we're just going to make sure that we've got the right imaging test. And really that's pretty simple. We need a dynamic contrast enhanced CT or MRI, and we want to make sure we don't have too many artifacts. And if that's the case, then we move on. The next thing we're going to do is rule out tumor in vein. I'm just going to oversimplify this by saying that you're going to do that by identifying unequivocal, enhancing soft tissue in vein. Next, we're going to rule out benign disease. So these are things like cysts, hemangiomas, vocal fibrosis, perfusional alterations. We want to discard those as we move through the algorithm. Step 5, we're going to take out all of those non-HCCs, all of those atypical malignant-looking lesions. We don't want those to end up classified as an LR5. These are going to be identified on the basis of targetoid features, necrosis, infiltrative appearance. So where does that leave us? That basically takes us down past the first half of the algorithm, and we should be left at this point with solid hepatocellular nodules. To those, we're going to apply stringent criteria to come up with the diagnosis of HCC. And that takes us to this diagnostic table. The diagnostic table may look at first glance a little complex, but it's relatively easy if you just follow the rules. We've got the major features over here. We've got no arterial phase hyperenhancement, arterial phase hyperenhancement. We're just going to look at the combinations of these, and from there we're going to come up with LR3s, which are intermediate probability of malignancy, LR4s, which are high probability of HCC, and the definite HCCs. So that is, in a brief, what LI-RADS is, and that's how we apply the diagnostic algorithm. So what's changed? What's new that you should be aware of within the last couple of years? Well, probably the most monumental thing that's happened is that in 2018, we unified with the AASLD for the diagnostic criteria of HCC, as applies to the CT and MR diagnostic algorithm. In order to unify with them, we had to make some compromises. And really, the compromise was to adjust the criteria for LR5 within this one cell. The rest of the diagnostic table remains the same, but what we've removed is the requirement for antecedent ultrasound visibility, and we've simplified the approach that now we just need AFI, that's what we call arterial phase hyperenhancement if you're in the know, and we need washout. And if you have AFI and washout for a 10 to 19 millimeter nodule, you've got an LR5. What else did we do? We basically removed some of the complexity around threshold growth, and we've unified. So there is one definition in the United States for threshold growth. That one definition applies to OPTN, it applies to AASLD, and it applies to LI-RADS. And it's here. It's basically a greater than or equal to 50% increase in size in less than or equal to 6-month interval of time. The other versions of threshold growth that we recognized in the past have now been kind of demoted to subthreshold growth. So what do we know? This happened in 2018. We've had time to think about this. We've had time to assess the literature. Some papers have come out. We have some retrospective reader studies, which very simplistically putting it, have shown increased sensitivity for HCC with the 2018 criteria, as one might expect. This has resulted in a minimal decrease in specificity, which does not appear, at least in the papers out there today, to be significant clinically. And we have overall improved accuracy, especially for small HCCs. If we want to look at this from sort of a different perspective, this is again from Dr. Cherniak, her second shout out of the night. And this is a retrospective chart review of over 600 observations. And if we look at it from the lesion perspective, what's happening when we apply 2018 versus 2017? Well, what's happening is that we're moving a lot of these observations from the LR4 category to the LR5 category. So they're going from kind of an indeterminate category to a definite category. If we look at this from the patient perspective, with regards to transplant eligibility, we know the importance of T2 stage. Patients with T2 stage HCC may be eligible for automatic MELD exception points. That gets them a liver a lot faster than if they don't have T2 stage disease. And it really had very little impact on the overall T2 stage. So in summary, for this particular piece of the talk, we're not done overall, but we have updates to the LR5 criteria in 2018 that I've just reviewed for you very quickly, and these updates appear to give us better accuracy, especially for small HCCs. So what's new in some of these other contexts that we have? How about the treatment response algorithm? So this was released in 2017. This was not updated in 2018. And for those of you, you've probably seen this out there, and hopefully some of you are using this in practice. But we basically have three categories. We have non-viable, equivocal, and viable. So what has changed is that we're starting to get some emerging evidence to let us know how we're doing with this. This was basically the result of expert consensus and best available evidence at the time, but really this requires some validation steps to see if the LR-TRA is good and if it functions the way that we think it should. So there aren't a lot of papers out there, really just a couple, and it shows, at least in this paper, that the TRA performs okay on CT and MRI alike, and it performs as good or better on a lesion-by-lesion basis if we apply MRESIST on the lesion basis. But I want to draw your attention to this paper, and from the same group, we're about to see another paper. This one is focused on TACE, and they looked at the inter-reader reliability for the TR categories and found it to be moderate, similar to what we've seen in most publications for the overall LR category at diagnosis. They found, as you might expect, that AFI tends to be the most important feature for differentiating viability from non-viability. And the majority of, this is probably the most important point, I think, the majority of the LR-TR equivocal were pathologically viable. And this was a study where they compared the imaging to the explant pathology, so they had a nice correlation to look at there. And the majority of them were, in fact, pathologically viable. So what does that tell us? That tells us, well, maybe we need to reconsider the way that we're assessing equivocal. And we need to make sure that when we say something's equivocal, that from the management perspective, our clinicians know the implications of that. So I only have 15 minutes, so we're going to cruise through a couple of other contexts here. How about CEUS? Well, nothing has really changed, unfortunately. CEUS has been around since 2016. We have not updated the criteria within recent years, and unfortunately, it's not recognized by the OPTN for MELD exception points. It's not recognized by AASLD. It wasn't part of the unification that they agreed to when we all unified together. However, I do think this might change in coming years. There's quite a bit of emerging evidence and a lot of large cohort studies showing that there's a very high positive predictive value for LI-RADS CEUS 5, category 5 for HCC, and that it actually performs very well at discriminating between HCC and non-HCC malignancies. In practice, we tend to see this be most relevant when we have a lesion or maybe two lesions that require some further workup. So if you have an indeterminate lesion with regards to transplantation status, an LR3 or 4, sometimes CEUS can be done and can really help us to be more confident in saying this is a definite HCC. So what else is new? We've got a new logo. I hope you all noticed. So you all need to update your socks, ties, pins, belts, and other paraphernalia that you own that's LI-RADS related. We have translated in 9 languages. This happened in 2017. For any of you who are from other places in the world, we are still looking for ambassadors, people to take LI-RADS to these other places and bring it home in a translated form. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. We have a manual. If you have not gone to the website and looked at this, I strongly urge you to do so. It is an unabridged Bible of HCC imaging. It is 16 chapters long, and it covers everything that you possibly want to know about HCC. It is a very valuable resource, and it is entirely free. So please take a look and advise your residents, fellows, and trainees to take a look as well. So we've done a little bit, but really the question, I think, is where do we go from here? And maybe that's what people are a little bit more interested in hearing about tonight. So I'm going to finish up with kind of the future directions and where we're headed. First, I want to shock and awe you with this timeline just to show you how busy we have been in the past. Since the inception in 2011, there have been multiple updates and multiple additions. And really where we're headed is for the next major update in 2021, and this will be our 10-year anniversary. So what are we doing in the meantime as we prepare for 2021? Our first or primary thing is that we really want to unify the world with regards to the lexicon that we're using. We want all of the literature to use the same terminology so that we can more easily synthesize the data that's out there. We're contemplating major features. We're contemplating a complete overhaul to the diagnostic table to further simplify it. With regards to the major features, I think the main thing we're looking at is whether or not hepatobiliary phase features could be made into major features. If you're familiar with some of the worldwide methods for diagnosis of HCC, you'll know that in other places like Japan and Korea, they actually use hepatobiliary phase hypointensity as a major feature. We've had a discussion in the literature about this. Is it time to expand the definition of washout appearance in LI-RADS? I won't go into too much detail about this because it tends to be a little bit of a nuanced argument, but the idea here is whether or not you can use transitional phase hypointensity as a washout feature, a major feature, which LI-RADS currently does not allow you to do. The initial literature that we have on this is mostly coming from retrospective Asian studies. Of note, they have a different demographic than we do. A lot of hepatitis B non-cirrhotic patients, so we don't know if some of the results they're seeing, which demonstrate only a minimal decrease in specificity and improvement in sensitivity, would really translate to the Western cohorts. So this is my point to urge you all, if you're interested in research, to consider looking at this as a possible next project. How about screening and surveillance? So here I just want to give one last shout out to abbreviated MRI. You just heard Takeshi talk about it. He did a great job, and I think we really are on the cusp of seeing this coming along. AMRI is really a promising modality for screening and surveillance of HCC. Of course, as Takeshi pointed out, compliance factors into these cost-effectiveness models, and we actually may also need some individualized risk stratification. Perhaps a one-size-fits-all with ultrasound surveillance method is not the best or most effective means. And finally, unification with OPTN. I've kind of hinted at this, and those of you who are familiar with the landscape of diagnosis of HCC in the United States will know that we have 3 systems. Worldwide, we have a lot more, but even just in the United States, we have 3 systems. OPTN is the one that governs transplant allocation, and so any center that does transplants has to use OPTN or has to at least try to translate LI-RADS into OPTN. So it'd be wonderful if we could unify with them. What we need to do that, it's not entirely clear, but probably a focus on patient-level outcomes would help with that. And ultimately, instead of having sort of 3 separate timelines, we'd love to have one system that unifies the diagnosis and simplifies it for us as radiologists. So in summary, LI-RADS 2018 was the last official update. You're all familiar now with the major pieces of that and how that changed, in particular with regards to the small lesions and the new threshold growth definition. The next version's coming out in 2021, so if anyone is interested in helping with that or giving feedback, we're always open to user feedback on any areas that you think could be improved. And I just want to put the urge out there that there are some areas where there are gaps in knowledge, where we need better research and evidence to make these decisions to improve the algorithm. Again, go to the website, check out all the materials, and with that, I'm done.